in Anapa, under
Oh yes,
Romanian
oh yes, oh
occupation.
yes. The Romanian occupation, and all men were collected during the day. It was a small town. All men were collected during the day into one place on the outskirts of the town. There were some uh, mills, the grain mills there. It, they'd been emptied by the population during the 3 weeks before that, when there was no authority in the town. And it was a good thing that it was all plundered, because it would have been more difficult to survive under the occupation. If people hadn't done that, everybody was collected, all men. The Romanian soldiers were just going through the houses and collecting all men. And one of them stole my watch. I remember it was a Swiss watch, my father's Swiss watch. He stole it. When he ordered me to come out, I thought I would take the watch with me. It was in the habit of it wasn't there. Brought to him, so she said, still. Romanians were stealing whatever they could steal. And then he sort of marched. Yeah. He was out, we were not. A column, the man was growing and growing. But there were others, not just here. I think there were 2 or 3 of them. And they were sort of going through the houses and herding all the men to that mill. And outside we were all herded there and stood. It is that group that had just been brought there, and an officer, a Romanian officer. Oh, there was the body of a Romanian soldier in front of us, and the Romanian officer who spoke some Russian, probably Bessarian, probably not, accused us in general, of having killed him at the time when the Romanian unit was entering the town. And for some reason, having accused everybody, he spotted me. I don't know what the reason was. I was in the front row for some reason. And you're a soldier. I was a teacher. He said, did you kill him? He said, as if I had changed my clothes, and it was a civilian clothes, and I said, I was not a soldier. He was very severe and almost abusive, insisting that I was a soldier and I had killed that Romanian soldier. And they were going to shoot me. I said I was a teacher. And then he asked the others, did anybody knew me? And one person said that he knew me. He had very slightly known me. Another teacher. Who was I? He said, a teacher. All right. He was addressing me, na ty, which isn't polite in Russian. And after that, he said, ваш документ. I had my teacher's удостоверение. he read. So that was the first occasion when I was nearly. Yeah.
Could we put a date and a place precisely on that,
yes.
please?
It was in Anapa on the 31st of August 1942.
And as a teacher, what were you doing as a teacher at that time?
Nothing, because schools were not functioning
Right.
for quite some time. In fact, the whole school year there was not much teaching. And then from the 10th of August, no one was there in the town at all. The Germans had taken Krasnodar on that date, and the woman who was chairman of the Gorsoviet was well, the radio was not functioning, so she was just running around in the town and advising the people to leave the town because of possible bombardment. And the town was surrounded by vineyards, so everybody left the town and lived for 3 weeks, lived in those vineyards. It was the summer, and the late summer, the weather was good, and fortunately people were eating ripe grapes. But also the bread rations would be honored, the bread cards would be honored in the villages, nearby villages. So people could get bread rations, small as they were, in those villages, some bread and grapes. And what could be better than that? And they really did. During those 3 weeks, they bombarded and from the air. Anapa, there was nothing really left. There had been very large barracks. I forget now how many of them, but 3-story buildings on one outskirts. The what do you call it? The Naval Air Force, Morskaya Aviatsiya. But they had been burned on that night, on the 10th. No. When exactly were they burned? I don't remember exactly when they were burned. I think on the night of the 10th, because I think we were still in the house at that time, on the night of the 10th. So there was nothing military, and there were very few, whatever it was, military left, and they then withdrew the night to the 31st. During the night, simply withdrew. The town was left undefended. They left along the coast towards Novorossiysk. Where was it?
Well, your general experience under the
Yes, general
occupation.
experience.
Then there was a possibility they were going to execute you?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And then the bombardment stopped. And just the day before, many people, probably most people, came back to the town, and what I described was the next day. So we were escorted to one of those. What do we call those? Where the mill has all sorts of enormous. What do you call them?
A mill?
A grain mill has
The elevator, grain elevator?
No, not elevator, but where that store, what it
The
was
a
stores.
barn?
Barns, enormous barns. And so we were led into one of those barns and spent the night there. And the Romanian soldiers were free to do what they wanted to do in the town, and they did their best to utilize the opportunity. So that was during the night, and we stood there. And, the floor was cement, and so it was difficult to, not impossible to lie, and difficult even to sit. So we stood there, and there was one end of it was utilized as a lavatory. There was a lavatory, and quite a lot of several hundred men were standing there. And from time to time, throughout the night, Romanian soldiers would enter this place and take some people out, and we heard shots. They were being shot outside. What the reason was, no one knew. I spent the whole night talking to a colleague of mine, an old teacher of Russian, a rather, well, not a very bright person. Generally, he was only teaching in the middle grades, not the higher grades. But I had known him during that school year. We were actually in the same school, and so we spent the night talking to each other. What does one expect? What should one expect? Guessing, not knowing anything. He asked me if I thought that he could ask his wife. Occasionally wives were allowed to bring some food, and whether he should ask his wife to bring his military decoration from the First World War, which he had been hiding all this time, whether it was all right for him now to have it. I said, "Don't touch." No idea. what the reaction might be. But he asked her anyway. So during the night, she brought him that ribbon or whatever, or perhaps even little cross or whatever it was. He had apparently fought with distinction in the First World War. It was hiding. Well, that's very interesting and very typical. He was hiding it throughout those intervening decades. So what happened next morning was that Romanian soldiers came, and quite a number of them, and sort of herded us towards one end of it. And then two officers came. That Major Păturescu, that's why I remember his name, he presented himself to us, Major Păturescu. He didn't speak Russian, but another officer, Captain Niklescu, I remember his name, was a Bessarabian, and he spoke Russian more or less normally. So he was interpreting all the time. Major Păturescu and Captain Niklescu. Major Păturescu is the commander of that cavalry battalion. He was now the military commandant Anapa, and on behalf of His Majesty the King of Romania, he was going to address us. and so the major, I don't know whether that was a part of his duties or whether it just occurred to him that he would address
On behalf of the king.
Oh, of His Majesty. Well, he was an officer of the Royal Army. On behalf of His Majesty the King, it may have been the first and only town that he had actually taken in the course of this war. I don't know. So, and it was the most advanced, geographically, the most advanced unit of the Romanian army. None of them were anywhere near that frontier. So, anyway, he said that on behalf of His Majesty the King, he declared that the communist power was no longer in Anapa. Oh, just a minute before that, before he addressed us. I'm sorry. First, that Captain Niculescu said, those of you who are professional men, doctors, lawyers, teachers, and then he said gymnasium teachers, secondary school teachers, not primary school teachers, and I think engineers. So he immediately registered people with higher education. Come out, the first
rank. First rank or first row?
Row, the first row. So we all walked out and formed a row. Now, former merchants, industrialists, and whatnot, all former people, landowners, come out, form the second row. No one moved. Well, but don't be afraid. There is no longer the Soviet power here. Don't be afraid. And so, very slowly, some of them, I don't know whether everybody, including, I remember, a man who had owned a printing press in the old days. He came out, he was the owner of a printing press. There was someone who had owned a bakery. I remember these two people. There were some more, but they were very reluctant, they were very afraid. But it again registered. Professional people with higher education first, all those second. They were behind us. It was all very interesting, and of course our minds and nerves were extremely sharp at that moment. We had for the first time met the enemy army. And then he addressed us on behalf of His Majesty the King. The Soviet,
He welcomed you.
no, he didn't actually.
No,
as far as I remember. I don't remember exactly. What I do remember is on behalf of His Majesty the King. and Captain Niculescu was translating beautifully into proper idiomatic Russian. От имени Его Величества Короля Румынии. The communist power was no more, and it was necessary now to establish some sort of administration here, and it fell to him to establish administration here. And he would consider some of those present as possible members of that administration. And then he walked along the first row and asked people who they were. And Ivan Ipatch Gavrilov, that teacher, colleague of mine, stood out. He was very thin and very tall and had a grey, large grey moustache. So he talked to him. Oh, and Ivan Ipatch immediately put his decoration out. So he stood out.
Excuse me, when this I came to an end and didn't know it.
Major said that the communist power was no more. Ivan Ipatch pulled his decoration out of his pocket and pinned it on his chest, so he stood out. I told you he wasn't particularly bright, but that was not for him after all these decades of hiding, you know. And also His Majesty the King. So, and he asked various other people who they were and whatnot. Didn't ask me. So, and then he came back to Ivan Ipatch Gavrilov and talked to him some more, and Nikolescu translated. And then he said, I appoint Mr. Gavrilov, Mr. Господин Gavrilov, the mayor of the city. Ivan Ipatch was terrified. He was terrified. And then he said to Ivan Ipatch, you can choose people to assist you in this task. I was standing next to him, and we had spent the whole night talking to each other. And he said, Sergei Vasilievich, from this, would you be my secretary? What was I going to do? No? They had just been shooting people all night through. And they had threatened to shoot me directly the night before. And so I said, yes. And so, and then they dismissed all these people. And I went home. I knew nothing about what was happening. I went home. Was intercepted. That's probably the first. Yes, that was the first time I met German soldiers. Two. They were not actually soldiers. They were SS. Oh yes, there were no other Germans, but there was a so-called SD, Sicherheitsdienst. Unit, operational unit, Einsatzgruppe at the what do you call those buildings with lights on them to guide ships? To guide
Lighthouses.
Lighthouse. There was a lighthouse there, and so they took over the lighthouse, and they were there. The two of them were just wandering about town, drunk. The
SS for wandering drunk.
yes, oh yes. They were very drunk. The Anapa had a number of wineries, and after the 10th of August, those wineries had been destroyed by their own directors, and the enormous, what are the vats? What are the vats? Were broken, and there were simply streams wine and grape juice and alcohol together, streaming through the town into the sea.
Kill damage.
And drunks. Most people were in outside, but drunks returned and were simply trying to catch as much as possible.
Right.
And I saw one of them. He wasn't able to do anything more. He was just lying there with his mouth. And so, the cellars were all full of this wine and grape juice and alcohol together. They were full, overflowing. But that was the reason for all those streams. And so these SS men had already been there and had drunk quite a lot.
It's not the conventional picture of the SS.
Well, I don't know.
No.
I haven't seen many of them afterwards. But they were certainly drunk. One of them more than the other. And it was the more drunk one who tried to engage me in conversation. I could somehow, not completely, but I could somehow understand his German. It could somehow reply in German. And that apparently was very bad. He sort of interrogated me, who I was and what I was doing. The streets were empty. There was no one there. People were afraid, hiding in their houses. And I was walking home, and he was interrogating me. It went on and on and on and on. And then at one point, he what's my father's expression? Запастись терпением, to store up patience. In other words, there was no lavatory around. He just had to turn away and use the nearest wall or tree or whatever it was. I don't remember now. But he wasn't actually here. And the other one said to me, he thinks you are a Jew and wants to shoot you. Literally. Run away before he returns. I was not cleanly shaven and sort of spoke some German, and so he thought I was a Jew, and I just thought he would shoot me, and that's all. Just because he thought I was a Jew, he could just shoot me. And he said, run away. And so I ran away. And he was too drunk to pursue me. So that was a second. Within the first 24 hours, there was a second. But that wasn't execution. The other one was threatened, the Romanian, with execution. This was simply a drunk.
Excuse me, Sergei Vasilievich. It's 7.